All right, Chery, we continue to keep tabs on the global supply chain, of course, as more companies continue to front load their purchases to try and avoid higher U.S. tariffs. There have been 3 major front loading events so far this year. Importers started rushing in containers from China starting in January. That's ahead of the announcement of reciprocal tariffs in April, of course. A smaller second front loading happened between March and April. But the real peak came in July. The data aligns with numbers from the Port of Los Angeles, the busiest container port in the Western Hemisphere. It saw historic high cargo volumes last month, breaking the record it set back in 2021 during the coronavirus pandemic. Let's bring in Seroka. He's back with us, I'm pleased to say, Executive Director at the Port of Los Angeles, joining us live now. Gene, pleasure to see you, and always great to have you on the show. So specific hard numbers here. The record for July, 1,020,000 TEUs. Did you ever think that right in the thick of a global trade war, you'd be looking at volumes like that?
Good morning, Marty and Chery. And it's been a roller coaster of a year. It's not done just yet, as we've proven. When hard tariff policy comes out, cargo plummets. When that policy is softened and deadlines extended, we've seen some pretty good pickups. And that million TEU month was the second here at the Port of Los Angeles, and we're the only ones to have done that. So proud of the dock workers, truckers, terminal operators, and railroads to be able to see upstream, plan the skilled labor for those arrivals, and move all that cargo in and out without one backup.
So, Gene, it sounds as though volumes have been sort of coming in surges. I mean, traffic is almost sort of manic, right? Does that make it harder to handle, though?
It sure does, Marty. And thanks to the Port Optimizer that we co-developed with Wabtec, we can now see cargo 40 days before it arrives in Los Angeles. So we weren't going to get caught off guard. But it's the up and down, the constant answering of the bell that these dock workers and others have had to show every time we've seen an uptick really shows our mettle. And that planning goes in and days out, whether it's preventative maintenance when the volume is low or running the gamut on hours worked when it picks up. It's been a very unique year thus far.
Gene, I'm going to go off on a slight tangent, but bear with me here. You probably agree that the Port of Los Angeles, any major port in the U.S., is a critical node in global supply chains, right? Not just important for the United States. Because of that, I'm just throwing it out there, right? How do you feel if you got a call from the White House saying that they'd be interested in taking a stake in the Port of Los Angeles?
Well, by California law and city charter here in Los Angeles, that port property is held in trust by our city. I don't know that we really have shares to give out to anyone.
Okay.
I have to say, that was a great question. That was a great response. But do you think about long-term supply chain shifts, and obviously you need to sort of brace for it beyond 2025. Do you worry that higher tariffs pretty much across the board, because that is really the outcome that we've been getting from these trade negotiations, right? The highest level of tariffs since the 1930s. So that could actually eventually lead to a decrease in the shipment in volume to the United States, to Los Angeles, and that can be only negative to your business, no?
Chery, that's a great question as well. And what we saw, a little bit of a trial run on this very subject back in 2018, when the first tariff policy went into place. And what we witnessed was, at that point in time, China represented 60% of our business portfolio here at the Port of Los Angeles. Today, it's 45 and dropping. Yet, we've still grown over that time. We're the only port in the Western Hemisphere to move 10 million container units over the course of 12 months. And we've now done that twice. And coming up on the outlook that we have, even though you're seeing that shift of cargo sourcing and manufacture to Southeast Asia. Shipping lines have put in nonstop services, keeping us competitive. That speed component has always been a very important part of our strategy, and it remains. But the work is not done. We're going to chase every kilo of cargo that we can in making sure that we're the gateway of choice. And we've still got a lot of upside on the export part of our business. Agriculture, manufactured products, et cetera. Coming out of these trade framework deals, the United States administration in Washington wants to do more business on that export side. Let's use this gateway and get deeper penetration into current markets and new ones for these farmers and factories to get more business.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions to get the macro picture out of you, Gene. So it feels like, I mean, you were just talking about that the big pickup in July. Do you think that was the peak? Do you think a lot of inventory is already there where you are? And does it cover the holiday season demand? Do you think companies moved extra early because of tariffs?
I do. And this trend really started, Chery, back last summertime during the campaign season when the discussion of trade policy and tariffs began to really get traction. So we saw a run up about 10 consecutive months of peak season-like volume from July of 2024 through April. Then that policy came out and we really hit the skids in the month of May, picking up again back half of June. And with what will be, I believe, the historical peak in July, there's a lot of inventory in the country. But there are a couple of segments that I'm watching very closely right now. One, manufacturing, and especially the tiered suppliers for the U.S. automakers. They've got to keep a steady flow of product even at these higher prices. A company that we're very close to here near the port in Southern California texted me just last week saying that their auto parts, which go to General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler in the middle part of the country, all received tariffs compounded of 97%. So this gentleman is effectively paying double for his products than he was back in January this year. Yet the downside risk of not shipping to these automakers is that if a line goes down at a car factory, it could mean $2 to $4 million in lost value every hour. Very important here. The other segment that we're watching closely is the small to middle-sized importer. Family business to the regional concern. They're dipping now, in many cases, into their savings to be able to pay for that additional tariff cost. This tax on American imports must be fulfilled and paid before the cargo can be released at ports like us here in Los Angeles. The struggle I'm seeing from those particular importers is immense right now.
In that situation of auto part suppliers that were texting you, who is eating the tariffs? How do you see, do they divide it up because they just need to get the lines going?
Early days, we talked about three ways that the mitigation efforts could take place on tariffs. Go back and work with your manufacturer. That's not been so great. Absorbing the tariffs and then trying to find new efficiencies in your own company. A lot have done that. And then passing on to your customer or the consumer here in the United States seemed a more likely path. Well, it was interesting because data that came out late last week said that import prices really have not changed overall. That tells me that the reduction at the manufacturing price level in Asia is not taking place. We saw reports from both General Motors and Ford Motor Manufacturing that their Q2 was really hampered by absorbing those tariffs. And we just had a small business person who's located here in Southern California on our monthly press briefing, Bobby Javahari, who said that he's passing on the cost of his kitchenware and pressure cookers, about 10%. Onto his customers that are sold through retailers across the United States. So we're seeing a variety of plays here, but it keeps leaning towards costs being passed on to the next in the supply chain.
Yeah, Gene, I think, for prices, there's really nowhere else to go but up, right, which is going to make it tougher for consumers and narrow their choices. But, I mean, look, for the Port of Los Angeles, you're coming off yet another great month. And in total, I think you're up about, 5-6% on last year. So that's fantastic. I know your operations are very, very highly automated, but I want to ask you this. On a macro level for the economy, right, the job market it looks like it's starting to stall. Are you hiring, and what about union jobs?
Yeah, this is another great topic, Marty. And we've seen those last 3 job reports, albeit adjusted from Washington. I believe it was 19,000 new jobs in May, 14,000 in June, and the 70,000 and change in the month of July, with those first 2 months being altered quite a bit, which got a lot of attention through the media and in other circles. But here, we're still seeing high level of job turnout. Folks across these variety of sectors that we work with every day on the shipping lines, terminals, trucking, dock worker jobs, warehouses, and the rail segments are all really making sure that all hands are on deck. And in fact, since I've been on this job, Marty, more than 11 years now, the dock workers' jobs are up 27%. And that's through all the ups and downs of trying to come out of that worldwide recession to COVID-19, contract negotiations with those dock workers that tend to change the landscape a little bit, and now into this surge of tariff stop-start inertia that we're under right now. At the same time, in the San Pedro Bay, between the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles, 25% of the marine terminals are automated. That's a much higher look than we see worldwide of the 360 ports that are observed, and only about 5% that have automation today. Yet our jobs are still growing with the technology advancing. And even APMT, our flagship terminal here at Pier 400 in Los Angeles, which is the latest to go to a real in-depth automated setting, is now the largest employer of dock worker labor across the entire West Coast, 29 port construct. So in LA, what we're trying to do is make sure that we recognize how we can advance technology, but we cannot leave the worker behind. We seem to be finding a formula where that job growth can be a constant.
That's actually a very good color of what's going on in the U.S. job market. So basically, my takeaway is in terms of AI impact on your company and labor market in your industry seems to be that this major discrepancy between white-collar jobs and blue-collar jobs. And it's just really the prove-it moment that you can do your job, do a job that AI cannot replace for. Is that what you're seeing?
I also see, Chery, it's a way to make the existing worker that much more productive. So ideas in AI where people are talking about planning and how machines can do that part of the business a little bit quicker. You cannot replace the institutional knowledge of the folks around this port complex and in the supply chain broadly. But what we're entering into, Chery, is AI using digital twins. Think about a below surface look at the port and making sure that the scuba divers who usually go down and evaluate the bottom surface of the main channel, the fortification of wharves, can see all of this landscape much quicker, and then they can go after either the trouble spots or where they want to build out faster. We're using AI for simulation on traffic patterns as the state of California begins to resurface the Vincent Thomas Bridge that connects Terminal Island to the enclave of San Pedro, where I'm at today. We're also looking at predictive and prescriptive analytics. So we know that we have 8 ships in port today and they come in on schedule. What if one comes in 4 hours late? The prescriptive analytics will tell us exactly how to engage the rail cars, the truck community, how many labor gangs we need out quicker than I could think of it, even being a seasoned veteran in this industry. So it's not necessarily taking the skill sets and just putting them in to an application of automation, but it's taking what that massive computer can do much more quickly and then allowing us all to work and build up that cargo flow even better than we've seen it before.
Fascinating stuff. Gene, it's great to have you on. Thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to us today. That was Gene Seroka, Executive Director at the Port of Los Angeles.